We have one more bill on the agenda for today. And that is House File 3363, authored by Chair Hamilton. And as he makes his way up to the testifier table.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tried to run as fast as I could.
Take all the time you need. And the Chair Hamilton, would you care to move your bill?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I will move House File 3363 to be re-referred to the House, where are we going? Ag Finance.
Mailbox.
Right? Okay.
Okay. And do you have an amendment that you would care to have the bill put in its proper fashion?
Not at this moment.
Okay.
All right. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if I could, in essence of time, we'll turn it over to, we want to do the A1 amendment right away? All right. I think what we'll do at this time is I'll turn it to the testifiers and we'll just walk through the bill, get us familiar with the bill.
Good morning. Identify yourselves and please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rachel Callanan. I'm Regional Vice President of Advocacy for the American Heart Association, and I also chair the Minnesotans for Healthy Kids Coalition, which is a statewide coalition of about 25 organizations working on policies to address childhood obesity, so really supporting healthy eating and physical activity across the state. And so we are very grateful for Representative Hamilton introducing this bill for the Good Food Access Fund. We're excited to build some momentum behind this issue. I'm glad that the previous testifiers raised the Minnesota Food Charter, because the work that we're doing with this legislation very closely works within that food charter rubric. And so we're excited to put this idea forth. Representative Hamilton asked me to kind of walk through our goals with the legislation, so I'll do that quickly. And then we have two fantastic testifiers who are going to talk about, no pressure, they're going to talk about how this program would really work on the ground in Minnesota, in rural Minnesota in particular. So to quickly walk through the parameters of the bill and the program that we envision, our goal in coming together, the coalition talked to a number of stakeholders, probably hundreds of meetings and pieces of feedback from people about what should be included in a bill to ensure healthy food access in Minnesota. And some of the feedback we got was that we really felt that it should be housed, the new program should be housed at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, that they really had the expertise in Minnesota food systems, they had the experience and expertise in loans, grants, and technical assistance that were envisioned as part of this program. And so we really felt that they were the appropriate state agency to lead this program. So that's where the program would sit. Our goal is to establish the program with $10 million per year in general fund resources. And those resources would go out in the form of loans, grants, or technical assistance. And we heard a lot of feedback from folks around the state that technical assistance, for example, was really important, because while some, grocery stores, convenience stores, organizations that might be able to help solve this problem have a desire to help solve the problem of healthy food access, they may not have the business expertise or the food handling expertise to be successful. So technical assistance was really an important part of this program. Loans would be a very key component, because a lot of the models out there require some financial assistance, but that money could be repaid and ideally recycled back into this program to be used on a future project. And then we heard that grants were very important, because some, especially nonprofits that are trying to help meet the needs on healthy food access, may not have the ongoing income to really be sustainable without some intense help kind of on the front end to get the program established or get what was needed up and running. So that's the broad overview. One of the key components of the program, too, is we ask that Department of Ag establish a working group of experts in the field who are actually working on these issues throughout Minnesota to really help inform creating the program criteria and guidelines and how this money would be distributed throughout the state to help address those healthy access food needs. So that's the broad overview. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there's a lot of detail in the bill because we're establishing a new program, but we're really excited to move this forward, and I think it dovetails very nicely with the previous bill. It's very complementary about talking about Minnesota's food system, and our focus, of course, with the American Heart Association, our goal is healthy food access. But a lot of the stakeholders we've talked to, the focus is economic development and getting local food and healthy food to people. And I will draw your attention to, in your packet, you should see a letter of support from the Good Food Access Fund campaign supporters. And we have, I think, almost 40 organizations who are signed on officially in support of this. And you'll see the variety of interests represented there. Thank you.
Any questions from members? If not, continue on.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I'm Cheryl Hills, Executive Director of Region 5 Development Commission. Thank you all for letting me be here to talk about the Good Food Access Fund. I do want to start by saying Rachel's correct in that this does really segue well to the previous presentations that the committee has heard through the urban agricultural bill. I think that it's important to note that our work through the Good Food Access is a different point of the food system. And so while the work of the urban agriculture bill before was wonderful presentations, those really do speak to the grower side, and what we're really looking at through this work is the access side and those access points and how those look differently in different parts of Minnesota. So I run an organization that does 5 lending programs. We're a regional economic development organization. We have gap funding and micro funding, and we deliver programs through the Department of Agriculture as well. And we do deliver extensive technical assistance to our borrowers. And we have worked closely with one of the food hubs that you heard about in Paul Huguenin's presentation earlier, Sprout MN, a nonprofit, whereas we do aggregation, distribution, and we're opening our processing facility April 1st, and you're all welcome to that grand opening this Friday. But that work has been over almost a decade and providing a lot of technical assistance to growers. This has been the gap in terms of the access points in our work in central Minnesota, the 10 counties that we serve around local foods. So yeah, I think you have some handouts or some information available to you through a couple of studies I just want to point you to, and you can look at later for context and reference, a little more detail. Kathy Drager at the University of Minnesota, the Regional Partnerships, did a study on grocery stores and i.e. access points, that's what those are, small grocery stores. That data did share the economic impacts of those stores to our very small rural communities and how important those grocery stores are obviously for our health impacts as well. We noticed a decline in central Minnesota when our grocery stores started to go away. Our health disparities were increased. And so we have, of our 5 counties, 3 of them are in the lowest, the bottom 10 in the 87 counties of the state of Minnesota in terms of health. And so that's an issue for us to deal with. So obviously this point of access points in grocery stores has been something we've been trying to grapple with. That's one of the reasons of my support for this. You also should have some information from the Center for Rural Policy on new ways to talk about this model of delivering food to our residents. And so I encourage you to take a look at that information as well. The reason that this is important to me, as I've stated, there is a gap in our ability to deliver technical assistance currently to these kinds of borrowers and or businesses. And they're not always just that C-store or grocery store, that mom and pop grocery store, which those are certainly target customers for our work. But it's also the new emerging kinds of access points like the mobile markets that you have more of, frankly, in the urban areas than we do in rural. And food pharmacies. That we have hospitals in our region that are looking at how do we take our 24-hour buildings, i.e. these hospitals, and create food pharmacies where they can also purchase food. And that is important to those people who are driving 30 miles and more to access healthy foods. And of course, as our growers understand, and probably Mark will talk about a little bit here, is that The CSA model, community-supported agriculture, is an access point to purchase groceries and locally grown foods and healthy foods. And so that's important for us to figure out how do we find resources to allow organizations like ours to deliver the technical assistance to those folks. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is that you probably know this already, but just for the record, I want to state we have a robust ecosystem of organizations that deliver technical assistance across the state of Minnesota. You have the initiative foundations who have gap lendings and gap programs, and they have specialists. You have the CDFIs that are all over. You heard from HAFA, the Latino Economic Development Organization. We have tribal economic development organizations. We are never shy of types of organizations to service folks in Minnesota. The challenge that we're identifying, and hopefully this bill closes that gap for us, is being able to take resources for specifically for local food access points. That has not been an eligible sort of area for us in the other forms of dollars that we secure to deliver technical assistance. So again, that fills a gap, but we have an ecosystem and we have a network of organizations within Minnesota to deliver that. So it's not something that we have to create from ground up and scratch. I think it's also important to mention that, again, it was really highlighted well how this supports the food charter objectives, and it does. And I think that was already kind of stated earlier through the urban agricultural presentation. But the access points is deliberately part of the food charter, which was created from folks all over the state of Minnesota. From our area of the state, in the 5 counties we serve, we had over 600 residents over a 2-year period, planning period for a regional plan, also identify food access and healthy foods as an important economic driver and economic engine. Remember, we're an economic development organization, so my 22 elected officials, local elected officials that are my bosses, they do look at the number of jobs created, the jobs retained, the markets that are expanded, the multiplying impact to my small communities. And so this is for us not just a food and security issue, which certainly is important to all of us and is part of the principles of the Food Access Fund. It's also an economic driver for us, and we recognize that and appreciate it, frankly. The only couple other points I want to mention to you is the alignment with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's programs, and how I also feel and will condone that this is really supportive of the kind of programs they already deliver, and well. We are a lender of some of the MDA programs, what they call, another acronym for you, the Ag BMP program. And it works extremely well from a lender perspective in working with our borrowers. And so to take this kind of resources and put it within the Department of Ag under a well-defined system that doesn't also need to be created from scratch makes a whole lot of sense to me, and another reason to support it. The last point that I wanted to mention is that for us, our food hub, Sprout Food Hub, that was identified in the Department of Agriculture's report, we work with over 55 low-income growers, and it's probably creeping up there to closer to 70 now if I looked at the numbers. And those growers really are looking for different market channels. So by increasing the access points, this is a no-brainer, so I apologize for being simplistic, but it certainly does help my growers in our goals in trying to improve low-income family farms incomes. So that is a goal of ours within Sprout and certainly our organization. It increases that farm to grocer market access, and that's important to us. So I just wanted to mention those points on it. And lastly, I will say another point that wasn't brought up earlier around the agriculture, the urban agricultural proposal to you in presentation, is that I do see a really great connection between this Good Food Access Fund and that proposed legislation, because it does help us also address another issue in terms of that rural-urban divide and connections. So when we're able to utilize resources and in knowledge and individual knowledge of our farmers in rural places to those urban agriculture settings and the new emerging work that's happening across Minnesota, that's really exciting to me, because that creates the we around food access and healthy communities and healthy people. That, and we're always looking for those opportunities to make those connections across Minnesota. So it isn't an urban or a rural issue, it's a rural-urban issue. So thank you for allowing me to visit.
Any questions from members? If not, proceed, sir.
Hi, my name is Mark Bone. I'm from Bluebird Gardens in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. It's good to be here. It's so good to see Bud Norris. He's been our champion for a long time. I speak at conferences a lot for local growers, and what I'm seeing is such a divergence and diversity in not only how we grow, but how we get our food to people. I mean, it's like, and here you're right on that same page. This is so exciting. So we have Bluebird Gardens. It started out way back in 1978. I was a third grade teacher for like 34 years, best job in the world. But we started this in 78, and terrible time to start because everybody raised their own vegetables. They had their own garden, you know. So we started out a little bleak, but we're Scandinavian and persistent. So we hung in there, and our stands grew, our vegetable stands grew. A vegetable stand is such a good model. It's such a good way for a farmer to start, so I'm glad we're supporting this in this bill. And it's a good way to practice and get used to what people want. And so we had stands for like 30-some years. They grew and grew and grew. We even had an era where, because people are so good, we had people put their money in the box on their honor, and our business tripled when we did that because we could have more stands and be more accessible. So we're all like outside the box in what we do. But we kind of grew out of the stand model because we couldn't sell it all. And so then we evolved into the CSA model. Beautiful model to connect people to their farm. And you were talking about kids. Oh my gosh, were they excited in the harvest events to come to their farm, you know, and learn how food is grown and how food comes out of the ground. And so that was cool. But we're kind of at an era where we're growing out of the CSA model as well. The first 5 years, we did the pre-packed model with the CSA, where they got their own box, and boy, were we convenient. We delivered to 80 drop-off locations, got up to 2,200 members in our CSA, served the local area in Fargo-Moorhead. It's a beautiful, beautiful model, but nothing's easy. And so in that pre-packed box, people didn't get choice, you know, and how dare I give them kale or not give them kale every week? And so our ear was always to the rail. How do we make them happy? And so, because people want choice, convenience, and connection to the farm. That's what they want. They also want it cheap, but we're not going to say anything bad about the people in Minnesota, you know. So last year, by gosh, we thought we're going to make you happy, you know, and so we are going to give them choice. And so we did build your own box at the truck. And so if you look at the screens, oh my gosh, it was like a third grade group hug with people coming with their punch cards that reflected their order, and they put what they wanted in the box. It was beautiful. Except that we spent all this time being the store. So it got us to thinking, why are we the store? So I sent a letter to Gary Spees, who owns Service Food in Fergus Falls, and I said, why are we the store? Why don't you be our store? Why don't you be the only source of our produce in Fergus Falls? And the minute he got that in the mail, he called me and said, let's meet, you know? And so we're evolving into that, where the whole areas we've served for 40 years, we're going to be where people shop. Do you know that 85% of food is purchased 2 hours before it's eaten? Which means the CSA is too disciplined for most people. And we served a mayor, even though we were the biggest CSA in the Midwest, we served 2 to 6% of the population. That's all. So our motto right now is CSA to everyone, and that's what we're doing. And so people in Fergus are just tap dancing on the table. You mean, oh, I can get your stuff whenever, our tap dance, bud. Show them how they're doing it. You can get our produce right in the store, yes. And so that's exactly what we're doing. But I think as we get local into all these places, we are not going to just drop it off at the loading dock. No, we're not. We're going to bring the roaring message of the farm right into the store. It's not going to be a limp little sign that says local. Talk about boring. What does local mean? It could be our country, for gosh sakes, you know? And so Bluebird Gardens and the story of the farm and videos and pictures and the field and social media. It's going to be their farm in the store. And so who's part of this network? We are so excited. Service Food in Fergus Falls, and Perham, Econo Foods in Wahpeton and Bemidji, Central Market in Detroit Lakes, Larry's in Pelican, Lake and Maine in Battle Lake, Hornbachers in Fargo, Moorhead, 8 stores are all so excited to, yes, have the local story of a farm right in their store. It's like pioneering. We have 2 awesome staff on our farm. One is from New York and one is from California, and they can't believe that this is being done. You know, and so I do workshops across the country, and we want to be a model of how this can be done. We're so excited about that. But we knew our CSA members love to come to the farm. We're not going to lose that. So here's our magic woods. Oh my gosh, it's surreal. And so we're going to do farm-to-table meals in the magic woods and weave local restaurants like, I had them in 3rd grade, Ben Shire's, North Union Brewing and Pizza, you know, to the magic woods and involve many, many local people in that. We're also going to have a corn maze and a pumpkin harvest and all kinds of things to bring people to the farm. We want to restore an old barn and have it be a seminar for learning and even be a juice barn where people come and drink juice right from the farm. But to teach people about farms and agriculture and all of those amazing things. So our farm has evolved. And all of us evolve. We all change and evolve. Our challenge right now is as we switch models is like financing, and we need investors. So if there would be any way, this isn't what this bill is about, but to have investors who want to make a difference, you know, because we could sure use them right now. That would be cool. But anyway, just briefly, we have 2 big missions on our farm. One is, and they're shown on signs, one is Bluebird Gardens, welcome to your farm, because it's their farm. But the other sign, it says Bluebird Gardens, biologically farming for you. And the lady who was talking about the compost is exactly right. The most incredible part of our creation is right below our feet in the soil. 2013, remember that spring? Well, there wasn't a spring. You know, we had winter, and then we had avalanches of rain. Good comes out of bad. You know what we realized then? We got to do something besides farm to combat the forces of nature. And so we bought new land so that we could do alternating strips of crop and cover crop all over our farm. We started with 10 acres. Now we have 404. We do, I could talk about cover crops forever. In fact, I do on the road, but we, even on the vegetable
We have 5
strips,
minutes left.
You bet. People say I talk too much. That can't be true, but yes, I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, yep. So anyway, what it's all about is cover crops hold organic matter, which makes everything happen. We don't need buffer strips. We need cover crops. I watch the soil right now change below my feet. And why does this matter? Well, it's biological farming. We have to make our nation healthy. And so it's organic matter in the soil, which changes the physiology. It's like so exciting to see your soil change. And then it's the fungi and the bacteria doing a symbiotic dance with the plant root and also adding the chemistry. And so plants can make any of these things. And we're eating a lot of simple sugars. If you don't have biological farming, we're eating simple sugars. But if you let all this happen with micronutrients and that, it's like nutrition happens. What's happened in the last 20 years is kind of scary. These are obesity chart maps. And 70% of what we eat is processed. 90% of what we eat has a herbicide that's known to chelate with the micronutrients, which means all it's going to make is simple sugars. And so we're up to 38% obese right now. And it's like, oh my gosh, the farm has to become our pharmacy. And it's not any pill that you read about. And so that's why our goal to go in the store is so big. It's that. And so why this Good Food Access Bill? Well, it's because it's doing just that. It's getting food to people. That's what it's all about. For example, there's a 14% decline in rural grocery stores. But Okay, yep, I'm about done. And it hurts small communities, and so the bill is all about exactly what I'm talking about. And so it's a statewide tool. And so if you have any questions ever,
Mr. Chair, I just want to make, but obviously, Mark's
Go ahead, Ms.
presentation
Hill.
is great. It does point out in 1 second that it does, that's a food access point a farmer is through the CSA model. And I just want to mention, it does dovetail quite well with some of the work we're doing with physicians and certainly the whole audience within Minnesota that's dealing with mental health issues and connecting mental health patients to food access and healthy foods. And so that's one model, that CSA and the grocery store model, and I think the Good Food Access Fund encompassed all of that. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, reviewing the amendments here, I would like to offer the A3 amendment at this time. This is basically cleanup language. There's no substantive changes, and so I would move the A3 amendment.
Members, any questions on the A3 amendment? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Amendment is approved. Chair Hamilton.
And, Mr. Chairman, the A2 amendment, I'm not going to move at this time. I am working with the grocers, and I'm committed to work with the grocers and others, so we will not be moving that amendment at this time, Mr. Chairman. And in closing, I would simply entertain any questions and ask for your support.
Did have one question from Representative Nornis, who may be doing the tap dance.
Yes, I gotta have a change of shoes, however. I didn't have a question, I was just gonna point out, I hope you noticed the enthusiasm. I did.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark, for being here. There was a loss to public education when he retired from teaching, but great to the agriculture people, so keep it up. We enjoy his food.
My only question on this bill, it sounds very good, but are we talking more of a seasonal aspect? Fresh fruits, vegetables in Minnesota are seasonal. Can this be a year-round thing or mostly in the summertime?
Hi, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Really, our goal with this bill is to be flexible. So while it definitely will support a lot of the local agricultural farmers who are providing fresh produce and healthy foods, we envision that it also would support a grocery store buying more conventional products through the pipeline. But I think the key to note is that without the local retailers, farmers like Mark Bowen will not, the markets that they're trying to sell to will dry up. That we're, definitely the trend is a reduction in small grocery stores around the state. And so the goal of this program is to help to reduce that trend or reverse the trend.
Representative Bly.
I'll be quick, guy. I just wanted to say how much I am pleased with this bill and really support it. Representative Hamilton, thank you for bringing it forward. I happen to suffer from heart disease, and I know that the importance of healthy food and its availability. And my first teaching job, I taught out in Milan, Minnesota, and at that time it was very difficult to find good produce. Now that's changed and it's different. I understand the grocery store in Milan is very healthy and doing well. But I think that having that access in the rural Minnesota is really important for everybody to be able to get the good food that you produce. I also think that we are beginning to explore greenhouses and what you can do throughout the year so that growing doesn't just have to be during the growing season.
Chair Hamilton, final thoughts and comments.
I ask for your support.
And the bill would move to government operations as amended.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'd renew my motion, and it goes to GovOps, and I don't think I clarified that initially. So I'd renew my motion that this be re-referred to GovOps.
So House File 3363 moved as amended to government operations. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion has been approved, and your bill is on the way, Chair Hamilton.